In this video we fit the railway liners from Model Tech. We go to an auction to buy some trains. We fit a new speaker and sound file to my Class 50. And we even go on tour. Welcome to my summer update. Hi, welcome back to Chadwick Model Railway. I'm Charlie and this is my summer update. You'll enjoy this one. It's a corker. Now, have you ever been to an auction which contains a great deal of model railway stuff? Well, back in May at an auction house called Couplings in Somerset, my wife mentioned to me that this auction was on. So as quick as a flash, I went along and viewed all the items that were of interest to me. And whilst I remember, if you go to an auction and you think of buying stuff, be very sensible about what you're getting yourself into, because there's I think it's a 24% buyer's premium. So if you buy something for 100 quid, clearly it's going to cost you 124 quid because there's a bit of a VAT involved and this buyer's premium, right? But do take along a 9-volt smoke alarm battery. So you go and see your stuff, and I was particularly interested in diesel hydraulics, so I pulled out a couple of Hymex and a couple of teddy bear shunters, that sort of stuff. And of course, with this little battery, you can poke it on the wheels and make sure it goes around, because all this stuff is sold as seen. So if you get it home and you take it apart and find there's no motor in it, then clearly you've been sort of suckered. Now, all the stuff at this auction was being sold by one individual. He was a avid collector, let's say, collected all this stuff, loads and literally hundreds of locos, and then decided that he was never going to build a layout. He was just had an urge to sort of keep buying stuff. We've all been there. Anyway, so went along with my battery, go and test all these locos out, and then think to myself, do I want to come back for the auction day? Well, yes, I did. So I came in on the auction day, signed the forms, picked up a bidding number, and then took a seat and wait for the auction to start. Now, you can to buy from an auction, there's two ways of doing this, really. Well, sorry, three ways. You can go to the auction and bid in real time. You can leave a bid. Now, whether you leave a bid, telephone bid or whatever, or of course, you can bid online, at the click of a mouse. It used to be by phone, but that kind of thing is gone now. But a word of warning. So let's say that you're interested in that locomotive and it's listed in the catalogue with a guide price of £50. And you think to yourself, I want that, but I can go to £100 on that. I would gladly bid £100. So you can't go to the auction because you live in Shropshire. You can't go online and bid because you're on holiday or whatever. So you leave a bid of £100. Now, when the auction starts, if you hadn't left that bid and there were no other bids, then the auctioneer would start, okay, lot number 28, Helgian locomotives, £50, £30, £30, and we're away. And that's the way an auction would run. And then people in the auction there or online would then bid it up. However, because you bid £100 online and you've left that bid, the auctioneer would start, right, lot number 28, Helgian locomotives, blah, 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 £100, any advance on 100, 110 anywhere? And they start at the top end of your bid. They start at the highest bid that's already been left. So if you can avoid bidding, leaving a large bid, instead bid online, or even better, bid at the venue, then you're much more chance of picking up a bargain or perhaps not getting ripped off. Because that bid of £100, if you'd been in the auction room, you actually might have got that item for 70 quid. But if it's that important to you, then that's the way it is. And I found that at this auction.
Pound a bid now, where's 8? 38. 38, 40 bid, 42, 42, 42 now 5 where? 42, 45, 48. 48, 48, 50, 5, 55 now 60 where? 55 pound a bid now, where's 60? 55 pound a bid, then 60 or not, or are we down at 55? Sold down below. 55, 9, 3, 5, 7 and 55. 8 wagons this time, and I'm in a little book to start with me at £40. £40 a minute, 40, do I see 2 now? At £40 a minute, 40, 42, I'm out. At £42 a minute, now where's 5 then? At £42 a minute, 5 where? 45. At 45, 48, 50. £50 a minute, 50 now, where's 5? At £50 a minute, 55 or not? At £50 a minute, 55 or not? Or are we unsold down below at £50? 9357.
Now here we have the catalogue from that day at Killins, and if I scroll down you'll see some interesting sort of facts. Now if we look at this lot here, lot 5, the estimate was £40 to £60, and it actually finished on 130, plus of course your buyer's premium. And when we look at the item here, it's obviously a pair of class 14s, or as we call them, teddy bear shunters. Now one of the lots I bid on a little later was lot 19, I think it was. So lot 19 here, and I bid on this one and won it, and a teddy bear shunter and a Hymek, both brand new, and I bought these for £95, plus of course the buyer's premium. So you can see that there are bargains to be had if of course what you're buying is serviceable. And as you can see, you know, I was there sort of bidding away, and some lots I won and some lots I didn't. But it was a very, very interesting day out. And if you want to go along to an auction, you know, be honest with yourself, keep your hands in your pockets, and only bid on the stuff that you really want. And of course, when you get it home, it might not work, and these things are sold as seen. There's no taking it back to the shop under your warranty. It's all gone. And remember, there's a buyer's premium. I think this auction site was 24, with the VAT, came in at 24%. I went there, I must confess, I spent a couple of £100, and I bought some Hymex teddy bear shunters. I think I bought a Western and other bits and bobs. But there was tons of stuff. There was thousands of pounds worth of Hornby sort of Skadale kits and all this sort of stuff. Loads and loads of stuff. So if you hear of an auction coming up near you, please do go along, but buyer beware. You know, these things are never as easy as you think you are, and of course it's quite exciting, but it's like when you go onto eBay and you start getting into a bidding frenzy in the last sort of 20 seconds. You know, don't take it personally. Draw yourself a line. That's how much I want to spend, and spend no more. There we go. Anyway, auction comes up near you. Go along. It's a great experience. Now, if you're enjoying this video, could I ask you to subscribe, please? There's the old button. Just hit the button and become a subscriber, and I'll be welcome to have you on board. If you're already a subscriber, can you hit the button anyway, just to confirm it? Because there has been some odd goings on. People have found themselves being sort of unsubscribed from many channels. Thank you very much. Now, following on from the last video, where I put some sort of greenery in the approaches towards the branch line station, it probably becomes obvious that most of the track laying is finished, and all I have to do now is lay the track down in the branch line station and the odd siding, and we're done. So to that end, it's time now to think seriously about the scenics. But there's one little thing that I need to consider before I do the main scenics on the front board, and that is access above it to the large computer screen and any other bits and bobs I want to add on. The reason is, of course, I'm going to stamp all over that to get up there and fit another screen or two. Why would I need those? Well, the main screen obviously works for train controller or any other sort of system you might choose to use, such as iTrain or JMRI. But it's useful to have another screen or two perhaps, because they can monitor other aspects that are going on in the background, such as what's happening on LocoNet or in Loco Analyze with your signals and other sort of bits and bobs that are going on. Also, you can split the screen from train controller. You can have your Loco register on one side and then your main sort of switchboard on the main screen. So these things need to be sorted out. And whilst this screen is very large and capable, because it's actually a Sony TV, the computer I have actually has two external outputs. Now, when I took that computer down from the studio because it could no longer manage to edit my videos, I had this screen left over. It's a bit archaic, let's say. It's an old 24-inch monitor and it is quite heavy. But I connected it up to the old computer and it would work. So it is possible for me to add another screen alongside the existing one. But how do you sort of mount these things? So I thought I would just give you an insight into how I did it. And it really couldn't have been, much easier really, because this little mount, which has a swivel up and down, side to side and a twist, you just stick it in the wall and sort of put the screws in really. As long as you've got a load-bearing wall or something that can take the weight, you're good to go. And this little mount was just over £11 on Amazon. And if I can, I'll leave a link in the Show More tab. And you can see the spigot on the top there, that little silver spigot. Well, that little spigot goes through a hole on a plate that you mount on the back of your monitor. So it should be quite straightforward. Now, I mentioned about climbing on the layout. Now you'll see what I mean. Now, I have mentioned in the past about my over-engineering of my baseboards, and as you can see, for good reason. And then this little screen can just drop into that bracket, goes over the spigot, and is held in place by a little nut. Give it a pinch. Lovely. And then all we need to do is connect up the cables. Super job. Now, after a few hours of huffing and puffing, I've got all three screens sorted. These two actually are identical. On the main screen, the old Sony TV, I've got train controller. On this window here, I've got the loco list and 4 throttles. And on this one over here, I've got loco analyze running. So there we go. But what does that leave me to do now? Well, actually, all this space is now freed up for me to get on and do the scenics without having to worry about climbing all over it, sorting out bits of wire and everything else. The things are in, hopefully they should be good to go, and in the fullness of time, we can get on with some more scenics. Now, a week or so ago, a good friend of mine by the name of Ed came over for us to, play trains. Anyway, Ed pulled out a Class 50, a Hornby Class 50 sound fitted, popped it on the layout, and I must confess I was very impressed, because this is what it sounds like. Now mine in comparison is somewhat shocking. It really is quite tinny. I made a video, video number 12 I think it is, and there should be a link up here, 6 years ago, where I got that decoder, which was a Lock Sound version 4 decoder with a Class 50 installed on it by Southwest Digital, and I wasn't happy with the sound then, so I installed a bass reflex speaker, and as you can see, it's a straightforward kind of operation. But although it's an improvement, this is what it sounds like today. Now, to get over that shocking noise, because it is quite tinny and the horn is just dreadful, I thought, as I'm in a fortunate position that I own an ESU programmer, although I've never done this before, I would contact Richard Croft from Road and Rails and buy a new sound file to stick in that Hornby loco. Now, in conversation with Richard, he mentioned that Jamie Goodman does a good sound file and I ought to give that one a go. So I duly paid for it, and a few days later it was emailed back to me. And here it is on the desktop. When you order it, you need to supply the decoder number. So you open it up and it goes straight into the Loc programmer, and when you see this blue line underneath where it says Loc sound, it shows that it is a very large file. Okay, now we need to install it. So over we go to the Write Sound Data button, press the button and off it goes. Writing decoder configuration. Shortly after that, writing sound memory. This takes a substantial amount of time, probably around about 35 minutes. Now, before you just go off and get yourself a cup of coffee or whatever, don't forget to adjust the settings on your computer so that your hard drive doesn't go to sleep. Sometime later, it completes. Simple as that, really. So now we need to go up to the driver's cab, leaving it on address number 3, hit go, and then test the outputs to make sure that the sound comes on and all this sort of blah, and that the locomotive will move, and needless to say, it all works swimmingly. However, it was addressed at 3, and that is locomotive number 400, so you want to use the long address. Change the address of the locomotive from 3 to 400, unsurprisingly, and then up to Write Decoder Data. Hit the button, overwrite default to the current values, which is correct, and then it obviously writes that small amount of data into the decoder. Lovely. Back to the driver's cab, and to make sure she responds to address 400, and naturally it does. Beautiful. Right, let's see what it sounds like on the layout. Now, trying to improve this Class 50 a little more, I thought I'd take the opportunity to change the speaker. So I've removed the old bass reflex speaker that I fitted 6 years ago, and I thought I'd try one of these tablet speakers from Richard at Road and Rails. Lovely. But having taken it off, of course, now's the time to put a drop of oil, because I haven't been in here for 6 years. So what am I going to use? Now, this is the new kid on the block, and it's getting pretty good reviews. It's from Deluxe Materials, and it's called Locomotion Loco Oil. It's a synthetic oil, and the applicator is included, and the applicator actually comes on the back underneath this sort of sticky material here, and then you take out the plug, pop the applicator on, and away you go. So I thought the ideal opportunity to do this Class 50 whilst I'm here, and the details of this stuff is it retails at Buffers. I don't know if you know Buffers, with Maria down in Devon, at £7.50. I think this is a nice little oil, nice little applicator, nice little affair. So, being the sort of decent guy that I am, I have the instructions, so I shall run through these and give it a quick oil before we fit that speaker. So here we have a Class 50 with a new sound file and a new speaker. And if you've got one of these and managed to change the head code, please let me know how you've done it. Now, in the last video, when I was doing a lot of ballasting and adding in some greenery, I also attempted to improve the cess that runs along this track. I don't really think that I achieved what I'd hoped. the chinchilla sand, though being smaller grains than the ballast, it's kind of not quite small enough. So I think what I should have used was a buff coloured tile grout. Now I also made a bit of a mistake with these point motors. By installing these very detailed point motors from West Hill Wagon Works, they do look terrific. However, sadly, they are too late for this railway being based around about 1968, 1974, would naturally have the point motors that Pico produces. Now, I think it's widely accepted that these Pico point motors are somewhat overscale, but at the end of the day, they are far more accurate than these ones here, which are just too late. So it's a case of getting the screwdriver out and prizing these off and putting the original Pico ones back in. Now, like most railway modelers, when I'm out and about, then I might pop into a railway station I've never been before. And a couple of weeks ago, Margaret and I found ourselves in Suffolk. And one day we popped up to Norwich. Obviously, Margaret went shopping and I went down the railway station. And I was surprised to find out that you can still go on a platform sort of legally. And all you need to do is buy a platform ticket. Now, platform ticket, you'll be shocked at the price of this. 10p, valid for 60 minutes from the time and day shown, not valid in trains. But it still does exist. You can still buy platform tickets. You may know this, I certainly didn't. However, you can't feed it into the gates to get the gates to open. You have to go and find someone to manually open the gate. But you're going, I imagine this is something to do with insurance, really, that sort of thing. So we got into, I got into Norwich Station and had a mooch about. And I must confess, I don't know these type of trains from Adam. I really don't. I can read the numbers on the side and tell you, assume they're a class whatever. What took me there really was just to see the station infrastructure, to have a look around at the state of the platforms. And I must confess, the tracks at the platforms were absolutely diabolical. It was awful. You know, it would turn your stomach looking at these tracks. But when you start to look at the signals and the theatre boxes and the way all the infrastructure is weathered down, it really is quite interesting. And if you live near a railway station like that, and you know it's a complicated railway station rather than a sort of country halt like we've got around here, then do get in there and do some research. Please excuse some of the footage. It was only shot on an iPhone. I didn't have any of my cameras with me, so it is a little bit shaky in places. But it really was an interesting couple of hours. You know, I went in first time without the ticket, and then I inquired. They said, "Yeah, just go and buy one for 10p." Smashing. A good couple of hours research. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So now it's time to face the last big project, which is the branch line station, which is one big board and a smaller board that's going to go on the end at a later date once all that's finished. Now, it's mentioned in the last video why don't I use the ProTrack rail aligners to join the two boards together, and I'd always thought about just, you know, putting the bits of track across and bridging the gaps with one piece of track and then ballasting them after. But I don't think that's such a good idea. Now, on reflection, I think the advice they've had is valid. So what I'm going to do is join these tracks together using these little devices. So how does it work? Well, what you need to do is cut away 6 sleepers. You solder these underneath the tracks instead, and then using a slitting disc you cut down and separate them. And then when the boards come apart, it's quite straightforward, but when they come together they mate, and there's an interlocking sort of zigzag on them, and it's all kind of straightforward. More complicated when you kind of do it on a curve. So what I thought I would do is join these tracks together using these ProTrack rail aligners. Lovely. So here are the 6 tracks that need to be sorted out. Now, to be perfectly honest, I'm going to remove this one at the moment because that's going to be done at a later date. Besides that, it comes across 3 boards, so there's a lot of thought have to go into that one. So that leaves me these 5. So what I shall do is we'll concentrate on this one here first, and if I can get that one to work properly, then I'll progress on to the others. Now, a little bit of background: electro-frog point insulated rail joiner. So this rail here will have no power once we cut through all this. There's a feeder to this piece of track here, set of droppers there. Then there's a set of fish plates. So once we cut through, this small track here will have no power feed except through these fish plates. So I shall take this off, solder on a set of droppers to power it, cut off the 6 sleepers from the 6 sleepers from this rail. And then when we're ready to rock, once it's all in place, I shall solder across these fish plates here to make sure this piece of track has a decent feed from there. Now my droppers are on, and I just need to remove those 6 sleepers, and that was the good one there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then these are the ones that need to come out, so I'll just cut through the webbing, and then they should pull out easier. Don't lose count, Charlie. 4, 5, 6. That seems okay. The line is through the join in the board, so now it's time to do some serious soldering. Now, it's fair to say that the alignment across the boards is crucial. This board cannot be higher than this board, kind of thing. Well, hopefully you can see that this board is marginally higher than this one. And if I zoom in a little closer, you might just be able to see it, that there's a small step. So how am I going to get around this? Well, I've cut a very small piece of black plastic card, and my idea is if we pop that into place, then we stick this on there, then we are completely flush. So now you can see with the alignment modules in place. Now it's worth mentioning here that on the underside of these, perhaps you can see that there are 2 holes, and these are for droppers. Now I haven't used these 2 holes because there's actually a piece of timber back here in the way, so my droppers are coming off the cable as they normally would. And there are also 3 holes in the middle for the track pins, or in my case track screws, to hold these down. So what do we need to do now? Well, before we can solder them on, we need to scratch the surface of the rails to make sure that the solder does adhere to the bottoms of these rails. So for that I just use one of these sort of ordinary modelling files and give them a good scratch up. Now it's clearly worth mentioning how I'm going to do this. Now I don't usually use flux, but in this case I will, and many thanks Brian for putting me onto this DCC Concepts flux. This is good stuff, and because I'm old I put it in a jar because then there's less chance of me knocking it over. And I have a brush that I use purely for this flux, and I just wash it out afterwards with a bit of washing up liquid, and it doesn't go stiff or anything. It's good stuff. Right, now my piece of track. I've put it done with a clamp because we need to make sure that this stuff is held right down to make sure these are actually bonded on the other side. So you might need a kind of a weight to make sure that you get a good sort of join between the underside of the rails and of course the copper side or brass side of these little alignment jobbies. Right, what am I using? As usual, I'm using 60-40 solder. This is my go-to solder, and I've got a soldering iron set at 400 degrees. I imagine it's centigrade, not too sure. Right, so here's my flux. So all I'm going to do is just paint the flux onto the alignment things. I don't even know what to call them, to be honest. Right, and then hopefully I can lift this up and poke these underneath, hopefully without masking the camera. Well, hopefully without masking the camera too much, let's say. And that should be them in place. Now, of course, the hard bit, the soldering. Right. So, soldering iron and solder. Nope, I'm going to put some more flux on now on the outside of these, run it down there. And notice I'm putting the flux on the outside, so obviously the wheels shouldn't sort of run against it. Now, have I got much play there? I've got a little bit. Right, let's see if I can put a little clamp to hold this down. Right, hopefully you can see that that takes the slack out of there. Of course, what I don't want to do is melt all the webbing. Okay. Yes, seems fine. So the same again on the other side. Drop a flux down there. Now on closer examination I can see that the two units were fitted too far this way than that way. The sleepers here extend a little further than this side, and you can see a little bit of the brass strip, but hey, that's no big deal. You're never going to see that when it's in situ, and at the end of the day it's on, sound as a pound. So let's fit it. Well, now it's crunch time. The track's in and fitted, and I've screwed every hole on these plates, so there's 3 on one side and 3 on the other. I've also put some screws into this track and to this track, and I remembered the packing piece underneath here, so all seems well. Of course, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. Now with a slitting disc I'll cut through these two tracks, and hopefully one won't rise up above the other, and they should remain flush. That's all, that's the best I can hope for. If it's a tiny bit, perhaps I can always file it down, but here we go. Well, I'm through, and there we are. Perhaps I could have used a thinner disc, but it looks okay. Well, hopefully you'll agree that that is a satisfactory outcome. So I just need to repeat it again on the other 4 tracks, and then we can get this board off to one side and I can get on with the build without trying to lean over the helix all the time. And regarding the ProTrack rail aligners, these are pretty nifty little devices, to be perfectly honest, especially if you've got an exhibition layout and you need to start pulling it apart all the time. Nice little bit of kit. Good for you, Model Tech. Now, a couple of other points. Bill, did you spot the sheep? I got them purposely. Mark, thank you very much for your generosity. I was overwhelmed. I'm still staggered by it. And for you, a couple of videos here, and there's the old subscriber button, there's the patrons button. Remember, patrons keep the channel going, but please subscribe. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks a lot, take care. Bye-bye.